Well, good morning, everybody, and a happy Saturday to you. First, I just want to start by thanking you for joining me on this, well, if you're anywhere near me, gray, kind of rainy Saturday. And, yeah, I hope you enjoy your time here, and, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Because without people like you stopping by to check this out or hang out with us, we really don't have too much of a point in doing this. So what we're going to start with today is we're going to go ahead and get some of our muscles loosened up, opened up. I can tell you I'm a little stiff, a little sore from my workout yesterday, so I'm going to take you through a couple stretches that I think will be good for what I'm feeling right now. And my assistant trainer is going to help me by hopefully not being in the way, which he is completely in the way right now. Yeah, okay. Have you guys met my assistant trainer? Oh, he certainly has a lot of energy this morning. I don't have that much. All right, we're going to start with a pec stretch, guys. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can use a doorway, door frame. Me personally, I'm going to be using a wall. Just a very simple wall. This wall, right here, in fact. Get our palm nice and flat. Step away a bit. Then we're just going to ease into it. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, those push-ups got me feeling good. Ooh. Now, stretching is a very personal thing. Not for me, I just mean for people in general. When you're stretching, you shouldn't be trying to match something that you've seen somebody do or make your body look a specific way. What you should be doing is you should be feeling. You should be exploring. You should be trying to find, there we go for that side. You should be trying to find the positions, the angles that allow you to stretch and open up your tight tissues. You should avoid pinching sensations. And actually, one of the topics we're going to be discussing today is pinching tension and helping to identify it so we can avoid it. Because pinching tension is not something you want while you're stretching or when you're exercising or moving in general. But we'll get into that a little bit more later. Don't want to spoil anything. I'm just going to bring this angle up a little bit to get a little bit more into my subscapular, pec minor. A little serratus stretch there. Ooh. Oh, fantastic. So next up, I'm going to stretch my wrists and forearms out a little bit. I've been typing a lot at the computer lately, so they've been getting pretty tight. And I'm going to do this by using the floor. You can use a wall or any other surface. And we're going to point our fingers back towards us. We're going to grip onto the ground like we're holding on to sand. That's going to get all the muscles in the forearms nice and active. And then we're just going to start to lean that weight back so we can stretch through the wrist and forearm. And what we're also going to do is we're going to try to very gently rotate our arm bones towards the middle. That's going to help intensify this stretch a bit. And we also want to make sure we avoid pinching sensations or pinching tension inside of our wrist. We want to feel stretching, big stretching sensations. We don't want to feel pinching or things like we're crushing nerves or bones or other structures. All right. Ooh, so that's pretty good for my upper body. Next up, I'm going to open up the front of my legs, my hip flexors and all that. I'm doing a lot of sitting lately too. And for this, we're going to use our classic Arthur stretch, putting our toe box back against a wall, setting ourselves up so we can engage. Ooh, push the hips forward into a big stretch right through there. There we go. We're going to intensify this stretch a little bit by reaching our arm up on that side, reaching up through the torso, This is going to help us stretch into some of those deeper muscles that go through the abdomen and through the pelvis. There we go. This will open you right up if you spent many hours sitting. Oof. There it is. Now we're going to do the other side, because we're all about balance here. Nobody wants to be unbalanced. Get that foot against the wall, bring that knee down. Now remember, you may not be as flexible as I am, so if you're doing this stretch at home, make sure you give yourself appropriate distance from the wall to your knee, so that way you don't end up hurting yourself or putting yourself in a position that you're just not quite prepared for. Big stretch right through here. Another thing about stretching is it's a great time to practice your breathing. You want to be breathing all the time. And I find that a lot of times people get so focused on what they're doing that they actually forget to breathe. Oh, there we go. All right. Oh, that's pretty good for the front of the legs. Fantastic. I'm going to go through one of my new favorites next, which is the hinge straddle stretch. And get ourselves a nice wide position. Grab hold of the ground with our feet. Soften up those knees just a bit. We're going to drop into our hinge just to the point where it gets super tight. And then we're going to pet our puppy dog. If you don't have a puppy dog, these can be easily acquired at your local shelter. I definitely encourage you to get one. No home or gym workout is complete without one. But you are distracting. So once we get down into our hinge, we're just going to start to pivot our hips a little bit. And we're also going to pretend like we're holding a golf club to help us rotate our torso and get a slightly deeper stretch. Oh, there we go. Woo. Now, since he distracted me, I'm actually going to go one more 40-second round through this. I got a lot of tension in the back of my right leg. Some of those deeper hamstring and hip muscles. And unfortunately, the restrictions there have really been limiting a lot of stuff that I try to do. So I've been trying to take a little bit of extra time every day to really focus on those. So remember when I said stretching should be a very personal experience? That's another thing of what I mean by that, is you want to find where your body holds the most tension. And those are the spots that you want to take time to really work on and address and make sure the tissues are functioning and firing correctly. There we go. Ooh. There, that's good and open now. All right, well, I feel pretty good. Got the blood flowing. Everything's good. Everything's good. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take a seat. Take a little sip of our coffee. Oh, that's great. Oh, man. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So, before we get going, how are you guys doing? How's everybody doing out there? Anybody got stories to share? Trials, tribulations, jokes? Love jokes. Jokes are great. Maybe you want to share your wubba. Everybody's got a wubba, right? Not just Odie. This isn't just an Odie thing. Well, today's topic, I want to discuss with you guys one of the things that I've spent the better part of my fitness career researching, investigating, experimenting with, and ultimately implementing a lot of my theories into my practice. And the basis of that is what I call the attention to intention. Now, you may have heard things like this before as far as movement is concerned, or maybe mindfulness, how that's concerned. You know, being very intentful, or having intention with the things that you do, your thoughts. But specifically, we're going to be addressing intention as it relates to movement. Now, the fun thing about the human body, the amazing machine the human body is it can produce movement in 360 degrees all around us. We've got joints, we've got levers, we've got lots of fun things. We even have this thumb joint right here, this little saddle joint, which, believe it or not, we're the only ones that have that. Pretty cool, right? But the point is we can create so many different postures and positions and lots of other things that, well, essentially allow us to do just about anything that we want to do in the physical world and realm around us. Now, unfortunately, there isn't necessarily a right or a wrong way to do these things. And our body and our brain can sometimes not really translate and communicate the intention of our movement well. At the end of the day, a movement is a movement is a movement, and the body's going to find a way to get through that. Here's a good example. If you were to take a sip of water, it's a pretty standard movement. Sip of your coffee, right? If you take a sip of your coffee, very standard movement. But based on how our shoulder joint functions and works, there are inefficient ways and there are efficient ways for that movement to happen and occur. And over time, if we program in and get used to doing that in a very inefficient manner, we can actually start to cause damage to some of these softer tissues around the neck, the upper shoulder, and we can end up putting ourselves in a position where we get a chronic overuse injury, or we get a weakened rotator cuff, which ends up injuring us in some other manner that has nothing to do with drinking a glass of water. It's just, that's something we do so frequently, so often, that to program it in actually means that we're taking away from the work that other muscles that should be working can do. So, now that I've kind of given you a little bit of my anecdotal story time and some examples to help bridge the gap of understanding in these ridiculous words that I'm trying to translate to you, let's talk about what muscular tension is when we're considering the attention to intention. So I have identified 4 different tensions that I think are probably the most important ones. And they're the ones that I encounter on a continuous chronic basis. They're ones that my clients encounter on a continuous chronic basis. And they seem to be the pillars for what human experiences as far as movement is concerned. So the first 2 tensions, they are part of a same coin. So I call those muscular efficient tension and muscular inefficient tension. And they feel very similar, but there are some very subtle differences to them that the more you start to explore, identify, and pay attention to, you will be able to pick up on. And being able to recognize and understand the difference between inefficient and efficient tension is really the cornerstone to road mapping your own personal road to recovery or avoiding chronic injuries that you may be experiencing, getting yourself away from chronic back pain, chronic knee pain, hip pain, all of that. Now, of course, this is assuming the pain that you're experiencing is not structural related or something that can't be fixed by changing up your motor pathways. So moving on from those 2, we get the next 2. They're not part of the same coin, but they do tend to intertwine with each other a little bit. Pinching tension, that's one that I was mentioning while we were stretching, and unfortunately during stretching is a lot of times when you are going to experience that. But pinching tension can also be experienced during exercise or movement or anything in general. And then the 4th tension would be stretching tension. And that's I mean, the best way to describe that is the sensation of elongating a rubber band. One of the best examples I can give you of when you might feel that is, well, let's say you were positioning yourself to go into a hinge position. So we get ourselves situated and set up, and we start to lean forward, and all of a sudden we start to feel bands of tissue in our hamstring muscles and in the back of our legs just start to stretch out and really get tight. That's stretching tension. That's what we mean when we're talking about that. So I want to give you some real-world examples of things that I've encountered, things that clients have encountered, and things that you may encounter that will help you kind of identify the differences between feeling pinching tension and feeling stretching tension. One of the big ones is the pigeon stretch and the pigeon pose. It's a really great stretch and a really great pose for getting your body to loosen up and open up and really gain some flexibility and range of motion in your internal and external rotation through the hip and leg. But one thing that I've found is a lot of times if people are unable to achieve the stretch, at least in some of the lower positions, due to tightness or how they're holding their core muscles, their pelvis, the alignment of their spine, what ends up happening is they see these people who have been practicing yoga, or they're very flexible, they've been doing it for years, and just for example, they can get into this position and pose and have their hip very low to the floor. So now somebody who's never done this before, or somebody who doesn't have as much flexibility or range of motion, they see that and they think, I need to be down on the floor, I need to be that low. So they immediately start to get themselves into that position. And what I found ends up happening is they don't feel any of the stretching. They don't feel any of that stretching tension we were talking about up here in the hip and the hamstring. Instead, they start to feel pinches and pressure all along their knee joint. Now that's what we're talking about when we say pinching tension versus stretching tension. So if the hip can't get into the proper position to actually stretch those muscles that are tight, that tension has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, because the knee is the next closest point to where we're creating leverage against the ground, a lot of times that's where that tension is going to go. And it's going to start to pinch and grind and pulverize the ligaments inside of our knee. And that's just not something anybody needs in their life. Another good example of pinching tension versus stretching tension would be when we go to stretch our pectoral muscles up here against the wall or in the door frame. If you've ever gone to do a stretch like this, and as you're stretching, you start to get a pinching sensation along the top of your shoulder or in the back of your shoulder blade, that isn't the stretch. That's not what you're going for. The stretch, you're going to feel from the sternum all the way out through the arm. That is the muscle that holds on to the front of your arm bone as everything moves around. So when you're stretching, that's where we're going for. Any pinching sensations we get back here, those aren't good. That can lead to nerve impingements, muscle impingements, and just things that aren't going to be good for you. So those are examples that you can kind of encounter when we're talking about stretching. But what about actual movement? Well, let's say, for example, you're going into your overhead press, and you start to feel these pinching sensations up along your neck and shoulder, kind of where everything meets in that juncture. Well, you're not experiencing muscular efficient tension there. You're experiencing pinching tension. That's again, we don't want that. We want to avoid the pinching tension. And that's where a lot of times people can get impinged right around here. Now the fun thing about the shoulder is there's just so many different muscles that just intertwine and connect all right through that juncture here. And that's just the front. Move over to the back, again, there are so many different muscles that just start to intertwine, connect, and just overlap each other in this one area. So with all these different muscles sliding and gliding and all these nerves that run through those areas, it's easy to see how sometimes a pinch can occur, especially if one muscle in that group either isn't pulling its weight, or maybe it's become a little atrophied from disuse, or maybe it's become injured from overuse, or maybe it's just But the point is, is when we're moving, we need to be paying very close attention to everything that's going on inside. Our body's going to be giving us all of the signals that we need. It's going to be giving us all of the information we need to really start to walk ourselves through the process of getting our movements out of that inefficient zone and into the efficient zone. The more we ignore it, the more we just kind of go about our day, the more we're going to end up with those chronic injuries and, be wheelchair bound or just end up not having a very good or high quality of life. But this is also one of the reasons why you'll see people who get injured. They go through, the whole spiel. They go through the 6 weeks, 6 months of therapy, whatever they end up needing for what their needs are. And then they start to feel better. Their movements feel better. Everything feels better. And then they think, I'm cured. That's it. And they go back to doing everything they were doing before, minus these therapy maneuvers and movements that they had been working on. And what ends up happening is the old programming, the inefficient movement patterns, start to come back. Because the brain is always going to go towards what is more familiar. It's going to go towards what is more comfortable. It's going to go towards what has always worked. So we see these people, average people, we see these athletes who get these chronic injuries, these acute injuries. They rehab, they get better, they go back to their routine, they stop doing their therapy work, and they end up getting injured again in almost the exact same way. So this is a vicious cycle. It's a terrible cycle. I mean, it keeps people like me and physical therapists, chiropractors, you name it. It keeps us in business. So, I mean, it's good for that. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be seeing the same people over and over with the same problem. Because if I'm seeing the same people over and over with the same problem, I have failed in my duty to teach them what it is I've been trying to teach them the whole time. I mean, I love seeing people over and over again, but I don't want to see them with the same problem. I want to fix that problem and then move on to the next and the next and the next. So what I want to leave you with on this topic is I want to give you a very real-world example that will help you kind of understand what inefficient and efficient muscular tension is going to feel like and help you identify it. So my best example, and I love this one because this is one that plagued me forever, and it took a lot of work and a lot of time to overwrite it and figure it out. I say overwrite it and figure it out. Those old patterns, they'll still creep back if I'm not paying attention. Like I literally have to catch myself every time. But what it is it's what I call the drinking motion, or the lifting of the glass. So for the longest time, I would grab my drinking glass, I would lift it up to my face, tilt my head back, and when I got to here, I'd start to raise my shoulder up and tilt my head back further to get the liquid from the container into my mouth. Well, what's going on here is I'm squeezing my trap muscles and my neck muscles, and I'm bringing my shoulder blade up and into my neck. Now, I mean, that's not terrible. It's not bad. It's not like that's going to injure me. But over time, what that did is it discouraged my rotator cuff from acting when I would bring my arm up above shoulder height. So anytime I would bring my arm over shoulder height, my shoulders would like to raise up and roll into my neck rather than coming down, around, and hugging my rib cage. Now on the surface, again, drinking that glass of water was not causing me an issue. But we compounded that. When I'd be driving in my car with my right hand on top of my steering wheel, I'd have my shoulder again up in my neck. Hours upon hours, days upon days. So again, I'm exacerbating that whole issue where the rotator cuff shuts off for any movement of my shoulder above shoulder height. So now fast forward to doing incline bench presses or overhead presses. You can get pretty good. You can get a lot of weight up there, but you start to hit this point where push comes to shove and the supporting muscles can't support the weight you're doing anymore because they've been mismanaged. You've been using inefficient tension to train. So now you go to do your overhead press, the rotator cuff is not pulling your shoulder in the right direction, and sublux. And then everything's messed up for a long time. And then you start strengthening your rotator cuff. You listen to the advice that your therapist gives you. Everything's feeling good. Everything's feeling great. but you haven't identified the root cause yet. You haven't figured out why your shoulder was in a position to get injured in the first place. You just chalk it up to, oh, I was lifting heavy. That's it. But you never address that root issue. So you go through your therapy, everything gets better, that rotator cuff gets stronger and feels good, and then you stop doing your therapy exercises. You start going back to your weight training. Everything's feeling good, you're building back up to the weight that you were at before that you injured yourself at. You're like, wow, this weight, it feels pretty manageable, this is great. So you start adding more weight, you start building up again. But now what's happened is, you've now passed that amount of time where the body's starting to then revert back into the old patterns, the old routines. Yes, you've strengthened up that rotator cuff, so now you've got a little bit more support, a little bit more control, so you can handle a heavier weight, but you can handle a heavier weight, again, with inefficient tension. So the same thing happens again. You go to do that overhead press, except this time instead of a subluxation, you get a slap tear right across the labrum. Well, now you're going to need surgery. Oops. So the theory here is, or not the theory, the lesson here is you need to always be identifying where the inefficiencies in your movement are happening. If you're not paying attention to your own movement, you're going to end up injured. It's going to happen. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You're going to eventually get injured if you're not paying attention to your movements. And we need to pay attention to our movements more than we don't pay attention to our movements, so that way, when we aren't paying attention, we're more than likely to shift into those good patterns, those efficient patterns of tension. Because unfortunately, once you've trained yourself to do something in an inefficient way, it's never going to completely go away. It's not just going to disappear. It's not going to, you can't delete that software out of your own hard drive. It's just not going to happen. So you're always going to have to keep just a little bit of thought into what you're doing. And this is a great segue for one of the other things that I encounter a lot in my practice is after I've been working with somebody for about a month, 2 months, and they'll start to say, wow, my weak side or my non-dominant side, that's the side that's really getting it. Like everything's, moving well. I can feel the difference. But my dominant side, it's stuck. It's not picking up on it. Well, that goes to exactly what I was just talking about with the whole programming and shifting into the old ways. The side that you don't use very often, it's very easy to write new programming for. The side that you use very often is going to be that much difficult to write new programming for because there's already so many patterns that are happening and occurring. You're picking up your bag to move it from one place to another. You're reaching for something. You're pulling something down off a shelf. You're slinging your backpack over one shoulder. There's so many things that we do in our day-to-day life that you probably don't even realize you favor one side over the other. And it may not seem like a lot, but all those little things compounded into an entire day, compounded into a week, month, year, they make a huge difference in what kinds of movements and what kinds of patterns you end up falling into. But yeah. So that is our topic for today on the attention to intention. So what I want to leave you with, after we sip our delicious coffee, is that when you are moving, the next time you're at the gym, the next time you're getting groceries, the next time you're picking up your pocketbook, the next time you're doing anything that involves movement, try to be aware of what you're feeling. Pay attention to it. When you go to lift your arm up over your shoulder, does your neck muscle start to heat up? Do you start to feel like an uncomfortable fire in there? Or when you start to lift above shoulder height, do you feel the front of your shoulder, your rotator cuff, and some of those other supporting muscles start to hug tighter and tighter to your body? And you feel a fire, but it's not that uncomfortable fire. It's the working fire. It's the fire of muscles burning through ATP and building up lactic acid. That's the discomfort that you're looking for. You don't want the tingly, burning discomfort that indicates that something isn't right. You want that burning discomfort that means, wow, this muscle's working hard. Find the difference, identify between those two, and you're pretty much going to be golden. So before we wrap up the show today, go ahead and open up the floor for a few minutes. See if anybody's got any questions on the topics that we discussed today. If anybody's got any questions in general, I'd love to field them. I'd love to have some discussion. It's probably my favorite thing is social interaction. It's one of the reasons why I do what I do. I'm just going to sit here and sip my coffee while I wait. Because the other thing that I have to always keep in mind is what you guys are seeing is about a 20-second delay from what's actually going on and happening here. So, all right. Well, guys, that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. And we will see you next week. Have a wonderful Saturday and a great weekend.